got two lessons coming up talking about loops. The first one's going to cover the do and the while loop, and the second lesson will cover the for loop. So I'm going to quickly go through creating a new project here. So I'm going to fly through this pretty quick. We've covered it a couple different times in the past, so if you want to watch this in slow and follow the various pieces, you're more than welcome to, but for really the purpose what we're trying to get to is just get to the point where we can put some classes in there. So I made a new project called week 1 loop. I'm going to create 2 new classes in here, and I'm going to stick with my package name CST105N.week1.day1, and the first one's going to be called start. That one's going to have the main in it, and I got 2 dots in that piece there. Go ahead and finish that. And then I've got one more new class, and this is going to be loop 1. So we're going to have a couple different loop practices in here. Okay, good. Let's make a loop. I'm going to set a variable at the top here, something we haven't necessarily done too much yet. So we're going to create an attribute specific to the classes here. So we're going to make a private int, and we are going to call it counter. And we're going to set it equal to 0. So we can go ahead and set that for the various pieces that are inside of it. Now let's make a method, and this one's going to have to be public void. We're going to do loop, and we're going to do while. And this is going to be a while loop. A while loop does its check to see if it should do the loop at the beginning before it does anything in the loop. And its counterpart is a do loop, which checks at the end of the loop. So let's first do the do loop. So we're going to say while, and we're going to have something that keeps track of the loop, so eventually we can get out of here. And one of the most dangerous things you can do is have an endless loop. So we're going to say while counter is less than 10. And counter actually exists up here at the top. So this counter is available inside that method. So while counter is less than 10, we are going to system out. Let's say counter equals, and we're going to print out counter. Now, if I ran this, it would check to see if counter is less than 10, 0 is less than 10. It would print out the line, it would close the while loop and come right back up here and say is counter less than 10. Well, nothing in this loop is ever going to stop it. This would be an endless loop, and you would have to break out of your application to exit this program. So what we need to make sure that we do inside any of our loops is we have something that's going to what's called increment or move forward with it. So eventually this while check, this part becomes a false statement. Counter less than 10 is true. We want to get to the point where counter is 10 or greater so that it becomes false. So to do that, we're going to say counter equals counter plus 1. We're going to take the value that's in counter and go to the next one. So now if I'm going to go ahead and run this, and this is not static, so I'm going to need to make an object of loop 1 from start. So we'll go ahead and create our loop 1. We'll call it loop, and we'll say new loop 1, and go ahead and call that, and loop dot, and there's Eclipse helping us out. We want to look for the method that we created. There's our loop while, and if we run this, we will get a loop counter 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's our counter counting up, which makes sense. And then it got to 9 and it stopped because if I look here, when it gets to 10, 10 is not less than 10, so it exits out that loop at that particular point. Now, I have this counter that's counted all the way up, so let's go ahead and make another public void, and we're going to call this loop do. Make sure I put the right characters in there. And this time I'm going to check before I even go into it. So I'm not going to do my Boolean check at the beginning. I'm going to do my Boolean check at the end. So I'm checking while this is true, go ahead and do this. Now I'm saying do what's inside of here, and then I'm going to check at the bottom. So here I'm going to say counter is less than 10. And I'm just going to copy this line right here. And let's think about what's going on here. First of all, that's the word counter. So it's getting counter from up here at the top. I'm changing the counter in this loop. It's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it's going up to 10. It's actually making it 10 right now. So when I try to print it out, and we're going to go ahead and check that. So let's go ahead and do system.out.println, and we're going to say counter equals plus counter. Whoops, I'm going to make sure I put the quotes in the right spot. So let's see what it looks like when we get in here. So if I go ahead and run my loop do right now, let's go ahead and copy this. We're going to use that loop object we already created up here on line 7. And instead of running while loop, we're going to do a do there. And let's go ahead and run it. Okay, so counter is still 10, which doesn't make sense unless we understand objects, because what's happened here is I'm making one object inside of there, which sets all the variables inside of it to this particular instance called loop. And then I'm going to do my loop while. Loop while is looping through here and changing this variable to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 is not less than 10, and then it's done and goes back to start. But the object still exists. I haven't done anything to the object. It still has all the values and attributes set up to it. So when I call the next one loop do, counter still equals 10. So what I want to do is I'm going to say, let's go ahead and run this. But what I want to do instead is while counter is greater than 0. So I'm going to let it count backwards. But in here I have nothing that's going to increment counter. So it's going to stay at 10. And 10 is always going to be greater than 0. So what I need to do inside of here is do counter equals counter minus 1. So I'm going to count backwards now, kind of like a countdown for the space shuttle. I'm going to work backwards to it. So it's going to go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then it's going to say, okay, 1 is greater than 0. Let's come back in. It's going to print out the 1, and then it's going to get down to 0, and then 0 is not going to print. So now if I run this particular application, it's going to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 for my while loop, and then my do loop's going to do 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and end at 1 because 0 is not greater than 0, so it's going to exit before it does the next iteration of that loop. So two different kinds of loops. The while loop does the check before it prints anything inside of it. The do loop does the first iteration through here before it checks what goes into it. Something in the loop needs to increment your loop so that you don't just keep going. Endless loops are bad. Although in the next video, we're going to talk a little bit about why you might use them. So make sure you have something inside your loop that iterates or increments something so that eventually your checks, either in the while loop at the beginning or the do loop at the end, becomes a false statement and you can exit it out. Okay, so that's the do and while loop. Next one, we're going to talk about why you might want to make an endless loop. Thank you.